Vaggie or Vagaffa is a rather mysterious character. While she's shown to be very caring and supportive towards Charlie, albeit having a bit of a short fuse, she is indeed a sinner and somehow wound up in hell. As such, one can only assume that during her time on Earth that she committed some sort of sinful act which prevented her from ascending to heaven. So with that said, what sin could she have possibly committed? In this video, I'll be taking a deep dive into Vaggie's character and attempting to answer this very question. This was a suggestion I got in the comments of my last video from the Silent King, so shout out to him for this idea. Before I begin, please consider subscribing to my channel. I regularly post theories about cartoon shows such as Hazbin Hotel and Hell of a Boss, as well as other content such as reviews and animatics, which you should check out on my channel page after this video.
Whatever you say, slut.
In order to understand Vaggie and how she got to where she is now, we first need to understand her background. Vaggie is Salvadorian, a lesbian, and died in 2014 in her 20s. This means she ended up in hell rather recently, as the events of Hazbin Hotel take place in the modern day, arguably in real time if you're counting the Instagram posts. She has a rather gothic design, or maybe I should say mothic, considering that she's a moth-based demon. One of her most notable features is that she has an eye missing, and instead, a red X lies in its place. While these details may seem inconsequential, they're crucial in identifying her sin. But before we get into that, let's talk a little more about her personality. As previously stated at the start of this video, Vaggie is a great girlfriend to Charlie. Out of the two of them, she's the most responsible and level-headed, acting as the voice of reason. She's also extremely protective of Charlie, and would fight anyone who dares disrespect her.
Stupid bitch.
She seems to strongly believe in Charlie's cause of redeeming sinners, and from this we can probably assume that she's either a good person or at the very least trying to be one. She's smart, knowing more about Hell's hierarchy than even Angel Dust despite being so young, and having spent a century less in Hell than he has. Finally, Angel wondered if she distrusts men specifically.
Do you trust any man? Any men? Men.
And this could play a role when figuring out what her sin was. It's important to note that while we don't get an explicit answer, judging by her reaction, there might be some truth to this, as it's not necessarily framed as a joke. So that's about everything we've been explicitly told about Vaggie. Now we need to start putting what we know into context. This is where I talk about child abuse and sexual exploitation. Please make sure you're comfortable with these themes before continuing to watch this video. Hailing from El Salvador, there's a high chance that Vaggie grew up in poverty. 40 to 50% of people in El Salvador did so at the time. Here's where I believe her distrust of men might have started. Vaggie's father may have forced her into prostitution, and there's two big reasons to suspect this. When sinners die, the creature they transform into when they become demons reflects their human life. Vivzie described these forms as individual reflections of their souls. Vaggie has taken the form of a moth, a nocturnal creature. In other words, she's a creature of the night. A creature of the night, or alternatively a lady of the night, is also a euphemism for a prostitute. On top of that, during early development of Hazbin Hotel, Vaggie was going to be Angel Dust's girlfriend. They might have gravitated towards each other as they lived similar lives on Earth. As a side note, it may also be possible that the X's over Vaggie's top may represent a desire to not be objectified. However, it's also entirely possible that this is simply an aesthetic choice Vivzie made because she thought it looked cool. I believe it's her father, specifically, that triggered her resentment towards men, rather than a pimp or client, as it coincides rather well with how we've seen her behave in the show. For example, her motherly and overprotective behaviour towards Charlie may be a direct result of having to be the mother of her family. Maybe her mother died, leaving only her siblings, and her father. Maybe she was forced into the role due to her dad being a bad parent. If this is the case, then in all likelihood they would have had many rough, perhaps even violent confrontations. This may provide an explanation as to why she's so quick to anger when provoked. When the time called for it, she had to be just as aggressive as her dad was in order to survive and protect her family. This just leaves one final question. What was her sin? The obvious answer is prostitution, but there's a high chance that this wasn't the only sin that she's committed, or let alone the most severe. I think her father may have threatened her family in some way, maybe with some kind of physical abuse. This left her with no other option but to get violent with him, and in a fit of rage she might have made an attempt on his life. If that is the case, then I wonder if he retaliated by stabbing Vaggie in the eye, causing her to bleed to death shortly after. And for now, that's all I've got. Do you have your own theories about Vaggie? Share them with me in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like the video if you found it interesting, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.